All right, Brad, let's go to the Miami Dolphins. And interesting, interesting team. Okay, first of all, let's talk about the draft in a little bit. I know you're not a big draft nut, but you know they have a top pick in the quarterback and all that stuff. The quarterbacks are coming out. Okay, so Ryan Fitzpatrick ends up starting 13 games, 62% completion percentage. This is Ryan Fitzpatrick, by the way. 62% passing, 35-29 in terms of yardage. So if you played all 16 games, probably clears 4,000. 20 touchdowns, 13 interceptions thrown. So not quite that 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. And then what did he do on the ground? I think he ran a little bit less than usual. 54 carries, 243 yards, 4 touchdowns there. So it counts for 24 touchdowns on a bad Miami Dolphins team that had no offensive line to speak of all season long. Basically makes Devontae Parker and Preston Williams, by the way, who got hurt in the middle of the year, stars. What concerns me about Miami, not their ability to pass and their weapons in the passing game. Not even their weapons in the running game, but let me read you their freaking rushing totals. This is so bad. Leading rusher in terms of attempts, Brad, 74. The most rushing attempts on the team, 74. 135 yards for a 1.8 yards per carry average. 1.8. That's Kalen Ballage. You got Patrick Laird, 62 attempts. You got Ryan Fitzpatrick with the 54, Mark Walton with 53, Kenyon Drake with 47. And so what I saw with Miami, and I probably said this earlier in the year, but they're cycling through running backs, and of course they traded Drake, who blew up in Arizona when he got over there. They traded these guys, and they were cycling through, and is that a running back issue? Well, as we saw with Kenyon Drake blowing up in Arizona, I don't think it's about the talent. I think it's about the blocking. And so for Miami, and what did they finish? What was their record? Because they started, everybody thought they were the worst team. I never really thought they were the worst team. I thought Washington was.
What did they end up? Did they get 4 wins?
5
wins?
5 and
They
11.
got 5 wins, so they must have went something like 5-3 the last 8 weeks, maybe.
Let me look. So they got their first win of the season in Week 9 against the Jets. Then they won their next week against the Colts. Then they lost 2 in a row. Then they won in Week 13. Then they lost Week 14, Week 15, and they won the last 2 games of the season. So what? From Week 9 to Week 17, they were 5-3.
Mm-hmm.
Wait,
wow.
No, 5-4 because there was a bye. So so they were 5-4. They were a winning team back half of the season, even with a bad, in my opinion, a bad offensive line. So now here's the interesting thing, Brett. So Chan Gaily, do you remember that name?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, he's the offensive coordinator now in Miami, which I thought was bizarre. I thought that man, they got a crusty guy, and I don't know what the deal. Maybe the ownership, because he was actually an offensive coordinator. Maybe 2 out of the last 3 times they went to the playoffs. Adam Gase got him in there once, but so I thought it was weird. I started digging in because again, I'm writing the Fantasy Football Almanac, which will be available sometime in April, by the way. But the offense is interesting. The one thing, kind of like when Brian Schottenheimer got the job with the Seattle Seahawks, the one thing Gailey has always been able to do is get the run game going, which I found very interesting, given how bad they were last year in the run game. Here's an interesting, I don't know if you call it a stat or what, Brad. The last 6 years, Chan Gailey was either a head coach or ran an offense, and maybe it was 4 out of the last 6 or whatever. You know who his quarterback was? Ryan Fitzpatrick. So
poor bastard.
Yeah, I know, right? So here's the thing. Everybody says that Miami's going to be drafting a quarterback, and if you have that Tua guy from Tua Tag, I always call him Levayev or something like that, but I always screw it up. Tagovailoa. It's not Ola, it's Loa, which I always screw that part up. But a quarterback from Alabama. Everybody's saying maybe Miami trades up to 3 and grabs him. Everybody's saying, if he gets there at number 5, he grabs him. If I'm Miami, given how bad the offensive and defensive lines were last year, I honestly trade back. I really do. Because, and I'm talking 60-40. I'm not all in on this. But if they draft Tua or whatever quarterback they prefer, great for them. I don't mind that pick. I wouldn't criticize it. But to me, if you have the number 5 pick and they also have 2 other first rounders, you trade back, you get some picks for the next couple years, you do what Cleveland kind of did a couple years ago, but you actually hit on your picks a little bit, and you build that offensive line and you build that defensive line. Suddenly, you have a lot of picks coming out of next year. You get Trevor Lawrence or whoever, out of Clemson or whatever. You trade up all these picks that you accumulate from trading down this year, fortify that roster, and put that rookie quarterback into a position to succeed. You got Tua coming off a fractured hip. With that offensive line, I don't know. I think Fitzpatrick is definitely the starter next year, especially with Chan Gailey and that relationship that's been there. I draft for volume at this point if I'm them. But what do you think about that, man? Do you take the quarterback or not? Because again, I'm not hard line on this. I'm about 60-40, but if I'm running the organization, I'm giving serious consideration to just trading back, getting more picks for later, and trying to fortify my lines, both offensive and defensive. What do you think, Brad?
Well, are you saying that they have a shot at Tua?
They do. Okay, so
yeah, I think you take Tua.
You do?
I mean, I do.
And by the way, all of Miami agrees with you. All of Miami agrees with you.
Well, of course the fans do because everybody loves a splash, right?
Yeah, right.
They want to feel like they're getting lightning in a bottle, and it's not it's the fun way to do it. But I think that's also can be a very real strategy. If he is that good, like if he has the potential to be that kind of guy, I think you get him because it's especially if you're Miami, right? And maybe it's like a low self-esteem thing, but you have no quarterback. Fitzpatrick is not the guy, obviously. Right? And you haven't had anything that even resembled a quarterback since, 1998 was the last year that Marino played. Sure. And I'm not trying to be funny, and that's a fact, right?
By the way, for our viewing audience as well, Brad actually lives in Miami. So he's, he knows what he's talking about with the organization.
They're hungry for it, and it's super lame to not have a quarterback. And you could ask them, you could ask Tampa, you could ask the Jets, and you could go down the line, right?
Right.
Get somebody that they haven't had a guy that can win you a game despite or four games. Right? Despite not having much else. The guy.
Yeah, right.
And I think you go and look for the guy, personally.
Now, here's an argument. Again, I'm not waffling or wavering, but I'm just, another counterbalance or I guess devil's advocate, whatever you want to call it. But Tua, okay, so we were talking in this whole episode about how the NFL is shifting towards guys that maybe aren't scrambling, but you see Josh Allen having success running the ball. You see certainly Lamar Jackson having success running the ball. Patrick Mahomes, I would say, is more of a pocket passer. I think he's more Aaron Rodgers than he is Lamar Jackson in that he'll use his feet to extend plays, and then all of those wide receivers that run like a 4.2 40, he just hits them down the field. But these escapability is key in the NFL today. And so Tua is the more escapable guy. Not to say that Burrow doesn't have he's more mobile than I think he's getting credit for. He can run. He could run the option. He doesn't, but he could do that in his small hands, as everybody's criticizing right now. But I that's why I say it. I don't begrudge the pick. I wouldn't argue against it too strongly. But if I'm Miami, here's my end game. If I'm Miami. And again, you, by all means, I know I'm in this. I might be in the 0.001% who thinks this. The team was so bad everywhere. They trade Tunzel. They trade. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. The safety Minka Fitzpatrick. They trade the other Fitzpatrick to Pittsburgh in the middle of the year. You're acquiring picks, right? The cupboard is bare for talent. You're building a program. That's the idea. Okay, well, getting a quarterback coming off a nasty injury, though he will be recovered, and then putting him out there potentially this year with that recovering hip, with with the offensive line where he's going to be running for his life. Let Ryan Fitzpatrick do that this year, okay? So in the very least, if Miami takes him, I really hope for their own good they don't start Tua this year. They gotta get some talent around him. Now, yes, in free agency you can build depth in the offensive line. It's usually one of the positions that you can find a little bit easier. But I'm thinking if you trade down to number 5, I don't have the pick chart in front of me, but let's just say, Brad, you trade down from 5 to, I don't know, 10 or something like that. You pick up a first rounder next year, and you pick up maybe a second rounder this year or something like that. Well, okay, so then maybe trade down from 19 into the second round for another team that's trying to trade up for Love, the Utah State quarterback. You trade down twice, you get all these picks. Next year, you trade everything up for the number 1 pick in the quarterback. Now, is that a lock? I don't know, because maybe the team doesn't want to trade the pick that has number 1 next year. But you go up for that quarterback next year, and suddenly now you have Preston Williams, who's healthy again. You got Devontae Parker. You have a running game with Chan Gaily that should be good. You have a restocked offensive line. You have a defensive line that can get you off the field defensively. Maybe another cornerback with dropping down. Hopefully you find one maybe in free agency and stuff. Suddenly the rookie quarterback that comes into that situation is in a position to succeed if they want to start him year 1. Because you know what's going to happen. You just touched on it with the not having the quarterback, all the excitement, they're going to start Tua this year at some point. They did it with Rosen last year, and Rosen was not ready.
right. But why not start him? I don't know, man. I think that
I don't like
sitting Aaron Rodgers for 3 years, was that a good or a bad thing? I don't know, right? But
good thing.
all I know is that he sat for 3 years and then
set the world on fire.
Well, but the first year he went 6-10. So I mean, maybe if you don't sit him at all and you put him in the rookie season, he goes 6-10 that year, right? So it's like you're almost delaying that first year of inevitability where you have to learn so much just by playing. So I think you can throw these guys in these days, man, especially if they have athleticism.
Yeah, it's fair. That's fair. And you're right. The NFL is changing quite a bit.